to give you a little bit of background about my Muppet fandom, I watched the Muppet Show when I was younger, and I really, really loved it. I actually watched it kind of religiously, because I loved the hell out of that show. It was like this weird concept of having a variety show that was actually run and hosted by Muppets. But it wasn't like in a Muppet universe or anything. It's like they lived here and nobody ever really questioned it. It's just like the Muppets work on this show, and it's like, all right. It was so bizarre. I loved it, and the humor was excellent. As I got older, I didn't really pay attention to the Muppets very much anymore. I remembered them, but I never really thought about them, and I didn't really watch anymore. And this movie actually touches on that, on the people that either that happened to, or kind of younger kids who never really bothered to go back and watch The Muppet Show or watch anything having to do with the Muppets. This film is all about the Muppets finding their relevance again, and that I liked. That I really liked about this film. It's weird. It's kind of a cross between Rocky VI and the Blues Brothers. As strange as that sounds, that's a really good description of the film. And as far as that is concerned, I really liked this movie a lot. The plot here is that there's a fan of the Muppets who is himself a Muppet, who watches the show and loves the show and wants to go and see the old sets for the show. And so his brother and his brother's fiance or girlfriend, I can't remember which, they're taking a trip there, and they take him along with them. And so he gets to see the sets, but the sets are all broken down and nobody really cares, and he stumbles upon this plot by an oil tycoon to buy the set and demolish it so that he can extract the oil from underneath and get richer. He doesn't want this, the protagonist doesn't want this to happen, obviously, so he tracks down Kermit and convinces Kermit to get the gang back together and put on a show so that they can buy the set back and it won't be destroyed. I'm going to get into some of the problems that I had later, but I want to talk about the good stuff first, because that really stuck in my mind. The problems I noticed, but I didn't really think about them afterward, because the stuff that they did well was so good. I was able to overlook the problems, so I'll talk about that later. What I liked a lot about this film was just watching the Muppets trying to find themselves again. Our concept of entertainment in this day and age is so much different than it was in the Muppets' time. It's faster, it's more, it's louder, it's just the sheer quantity of entertainment that we have with our cell phones and our iPads and our laptops and our desktops, and it's like we can never have enough. And the Muppets used to be enough. And so that kind of thing, that kind of trying to find a foothold in 2011 or the 20 whatevers, that was really interesting to see. And then we have the subplots of Kermit trying to get back together with all of the gang, and there's this song that he does, I think it's called Pictures in My Head, or something like that. That was a really good scene, because Kermit's actually kind of going through something semi-dark in this film. He's retired, and he doesn't have much to do, and he's looking back at his memories. That's kind of where the Rocky VI analogy came in. All this stuff is done, and where does Kermit the Frog go? What place does he have when their relevance is done? And so that hit on an emotional level, I think, that worked. Although I will say that Kermit the Frog was really low in this film. I mean, I know Kermit, there's this theory that Kermit is kind of like me. He suffers from a bipolar disorder of sorts, probably bipolar 2, where he gets high and low, he goes up and down, and it's an interesting theory. If you Google it, it actually makes a whole lot of sense. I think that it seems like it's true, whether or not they intended that. It almost seems like they intended it. But if Kermit the Frog has bipolar 2, he was low the whole time. Like, there's not much enthusiasm from him here. It's all kind of pathos. which is okay. It was just really noticeable. I'm kind of used to Kermit. Occasionally, we get a yay from him, and I didn't really get that this time. It was all sort of, so that was kind of interesting. But just that, the stuff having to do with finding themselves, like the things like, one of the things that I loved in this film, it was very small, but Kermit is back at his old desk, and he has to find a celebrity guest host. And not only does Kermit the Frog still have Molly Ringwald in his Rolodex, but he still has a Rolodex. And that kind of stuff, it really made me fall in love with this film on a pretty solid level. And that was true for most of the film. I think most of this film was good. I'm going to go into some of my problems with it now, but however many problems I had with it, I was able to overlook them. So this is just a recount of things that I thought didn't work. Firstly, I had no idea that Jason Segel wrote this until I saw it there on the credits. I knew he was in the film, but I'm like, he wrote it? He wrote a Muppet film? I really couldn't believe that, because my first natural instinct was to assume that he's not really a writer that is suited to write a Muppet film. He hasn't written very much. The last film he wrote before this was Forgetting Sarah Marshall, or either Forgetting Sarah Marshall and Get Him to the Greek, but I don't know if he wrote that or not, because I haven't seen that one. It might have been that somebody just took over the idea of that character and wrote a film for it. I honestly don't know. The first film that he ever wrote was Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which I did see, and I thought that it was very problematic, but it was good, and the problems that film had were, it had an appropriate number and level of problems for a writer of his experience, which wasn't that was the first film that he ever wrote. I would expect problems like that. I'm not going to go into them because it's off the point, but the problems that I had with it, I would expect something like that for a writer of his little experience. So I didn't really hold that against him. If a seasoned writer had written that film, I might have been a little harder on it. It did have a few pacing issues and a few off-the-point issues and just a couple of issues, but it was, for a first film, it was pretty good. I've seen worse first films. I actually thought Baz Luhrmann's first film wasn't that great, and this was actually pretty good. What I think happened here is, I think that Jason Segel has now gotten used to writing relationship problem stories. And you have a couple of relationship problem stories in this film that don't really fit anywhere, and one of them I actually thought was not only out of place, but extremely out of character. It was almost a slap in the face to Kermit the Frog, I have to be honest, but I'll get to that in a minute. One of the relationship problems has to do with Jason Segel's character and his girlfriend or fiance's character, whichever one it was. It's a problem where she feels that he's spending too much time with his brother and not enough time with her. This comes up every once in a while, but it's so brief and it's so few and far between. I honestly, not only did I forget about their relationship and what the problem was after a while, but I forgot about them. I forgot that they were even in the film until in the middle of the film, the Muppets take over, and that's really great. And then the human characters don't have that much to do, and when they do have something to do, it's off the point. And I actually thought that this might have played better if they had just cut the humans out altogether. I didn't know what they were doing in there. I didn't care about them. I cared about the Muppets. This little subplot of him and his girlfriend having these contrived relationship problems didn't seem to fit very well with me. So I thought that was a problem. Then we get into the issue of Kermit and Miss Piggy, and this almost hurt me as a viewer. I don't know why he did this, but we're told that I think that they had gotten divorced, or if not divorced, then they split up. I think I heard the word divorce in there. I could be wrong. I saw this a little while ago, so it's not totally fresh in my memory. But Kermit and Miss Piggy split up, but we come to find that they split up because of Kermit. And there's a line between these two when they're talking for the first time in a while, and Kermit says something. I'm actually going to look up the exact line right now because I want to be specific about this. Okay, I'm looking this up on Google, and this might be a paraphrase. I don't know. I don't know if I can find the exact line, but I will say that as I'm searching for this, which I haven't done before, I'm noticing that everybody jumped on this line. So you're all probably ahead of me by now anyway. You probably know what I'm talking about. And I'm actually happy that people jumped on this, because I think this was a big mistake. Kermit and Piggy are walking down the street, and Kermit says to her, again, this might be a paraphrase, "You're always so dramatic, and it forces me to say things that hurt you." Now, not only would Kermit the Frog never even accidentally say something that would hurt anyone, but to suggest that he would deliberately say something to Miss Piggy that would hurt her is just not in his character. And, I mean, I think that in this case, like I said, I can forgive all the other stuff, but I think people are right to hold Jason Segel's feet to the fire on this one. I think that was a huge mistake. This should never have been in the film. It is so antithetical to that character. It is a slap in the face. Kermit would never do anything to hurt anyone. He's the most gentle... one of the most gentle characters that's ever been created. And you're telling me that after all the crap that Miss Piggy put him through, that he's going to be the one to do something in the relationship that's going to end it? I don't... That just doesn't work. That just doesn't work. By far the biggest mistake in the film, and it actually... It hurt me as a even just a casual fan of the Muppets to hear Kermit the Frog say something like that. It would have been exactly the same if we saw him in the corner doing drugs somewhere. I mean, it's not... It hurts the character, and it hurts us to hear something like that. I mean, it's not... You get what I'm saying. I don't need to hash it out anymore, but that was a big mistake. And this just goes back to Jason Segel. I think he's gotten into the habit of writing films a certain way, and I think he interjected that into this film in places that just didn't fit. When he did the Muppets stuff, I think he did the Muppets stuff really well, but he brought to this project his own writing style and the things that he likes to write about, and that kind of thing I think did bring the film down a little bit. But there's more than enough stuff here to get you through. If you're already a fan of the Muppets, I think you'll really like this a lot. If you can just hold your nose and plug your ears and forget about that line that Kermit says to Piggy, I think you might like this film a lot. It does a good balance of the old and the new, and I think that this is going to open younger kids up to maybe accepting the Muppets and maybe becoming a fan of the Muppets and maybe even going back and looking at the older stuff that they used to do, which I think was better than this. But still, overall, I think it was a good film. I know that Jason Segel isn't writing the next one, and maybe that's for the best. Maybe someone else will take all of the appropriate stuff that he did with this film and make the next film even more appropriate. But a good film, I would probably watch it again. I think it was good enough to have multiple viewings. I think that this was a film that got it mostly right. There were just one or two issues, and then that one big, huge problem of slapping that character in the face. But for the most part, this is a good homage and a good enough story on its own. So that's all I have to say. I think that you can tell a lot about a person by who their favorite Muppet is. Mine is Sam the Eagle. So tell me who your favorite Muppet is in the comments below, and I will see you guys all again in my next review. Take care.